Good evening, everyone. I hope you've had a good week. For those who are watching live, we only saw each other 5 days ago because we had a Wednesday lecture in week 7. It's really nice to see everyone again, for those who are here. And we're going to have a bit of fun tonight because we're going to be looking at assignment 3 in a bit of detail, I guess, compared to the previous week. And we're going to use that as an opportunity to dig a little bit deeper into React.js. So no real admin or housekeeping to start tonight. It's really just keep working along. You finished your first assignment, you finished your second assignment, you've just got to do this third one, and then you'll be through most of the course. So congrats to those who've kind of gotten stuck into it. I kind of got the impression that some students started assignment 3 over the weekend, and that many of you probably haven't started it yet. And you'll probably be starting it later this week, I assume, which is okay because from Thursday this week, you still have 2 whole weeks to do it. Yeah. So what we're going to do today is we're going to have a look through assignment 3 together. We're going to look through the spec. We're going to talk about it briefly. And then we're going to try and actually start this together just a little bit, just to kind of get the sense of maybe, you know, how to put a few components, no pun intended, together. And honestly, it's actually more of a React discussion today. I really mean it when I say that I don't think assignment 3 is too difficult to grasp, except for the React stuff, because if we just gave this to you and said do it in vanilla JS, you'd be like, oh, well, I just did that pretty much. So a lot of the hurdle for you is React. I mentioned that last Wednesday. Let me just make sure I haven't missed the comments. So yeah, big hi to everyone tonight. Let's get stuck in. So assignment 3. This assignment is called Big Brain. It's a React.js assignment. It's essentially where you are part of a really small company where you've been given money to build a Kahoot ripoff. So for those of you who are familiar with Kahoot, you will know it's a fun online learning game. For those of you who are not familiar with Kahoot, you should go check it out. I would strongly recommend you check it out because... Oh, that's the fire alarm. I'm just going to keep talking. Sorry, someone else will sort that out. So, one sec. Okay. So, thank you for your patience just while we waited that out. If you haven't played Kahoot yet, go and play Kahoot. Because it's kind of what the assignment's based on. And I'm going to be honest, if you haven't played this before, you should play it because it'll make the assignment much easier. And in fact, many of you would have played it, but a number of you who've played it probably haven't set it up before. Like, you probably haven't made your own. So if you haven't made your own, I would also recommend you go and do that because it kind of helps your understanding of the assignment. In fact, if you go to Kahoot.com, this is the website where you actually go and build a Kahoot. Like, you manage a game, you create a game, you edit a game, you know, the owner of the game, the coordinator of it. But then there's a second website here called Kahoot.it. I don't know if it's it or IT, where you're actually a player of the game. You're like one of the students or one of the, you know, the people taking this quiz. And being familiar with both of those is certainly really useful. So you've read the spec and all of that, and it's very similar to assignment 2. You've got a whole bunch of work in section 2 that describes what you need to do, right? Particularly, I don't know why there's no section 3 header here. It's probably a typo, but you know, section 2.x is all about what you need to do. Section 3 explains a very similar thing to assignment 2 in that I'm just going to go and I'll just quickly show you this whilst we're here. If I go and grab this repo, right, and I go and clone it, I might already have an assignment 3 folder here. I might have to delete it. Yep. So if I go and clone my repo, you can see here in section 3, forgetting what we're actually doing, it says, you know what, like assignment 2, you have a front-end folder and you have a back-end folder. Now, the back-end folder is pretty much identical to assignment 2. It's an NPM-based Express server that powers a back-end, and your front-end, though, is a React.js-based application. So I can go into my assignment 3 folder, I can go into my back-end folder, and I can do what I did in the previous assignment. I can simply run npm install. And then I can run, you know, npm start, and it will do all of those things once we give it a sec. Small projects are pretty quick to run npm on. npm start, and then it's like, okay, localhost 5005. Great. I have my backend. Very similar to assignment 2. Similarly though, I need to use my front end. Now in assignment 2, your front end though was just a bunch of static files. And you did actually like use a web server to serve those files, but they were still static files being interpreted by the web browser. For assignment 3, it's a React.js app. Now you can use npm or yarn. Both work fine. I'm going to use yarn for this one. And I'm actually setting up the React app. So for assignment 3, we ran create React app to give you a basic React app, and you can just install it. If you want a newer version of create React app, I think you can even delete it and re-add the React app part if you'd like to. That's up to you. But now what I'm going to do is I've got my little React app here, and I'm going to run yarn start, which will actually start up my React app, typically on port 3000. And it looks like my React app is empty. So I can see here, I can have a look at the source code if I'm not sure. Oh, it says okay. Oh, that's, sorry, let me kill my YouTube commenting thing again. I'll have to restart this. I gotta. Okay, so simple React app. There's nothing here. I can actually open the source code, and that kind of looks like a React app with nothing. Okay, so I'm actually loading my front end now. So that's really good because we've only just kind of started reading the assignment. We can already tell that we're already familiar with quite a lot of things here. I've got a front end I'm going to build to it. That's what we're going to be mostly talking about today. And then I've got my back end, which I'm very familiar with. Constraints and assumptions. We can only use React.js. We can't do any direct DOM manipulation. So you can't do any like get element by IDs and other stuff you might have done in assignment 2, like add event listeners. That's all assignment 2 stuff. Whereas we're kind of worried more about assignment 3 and doing everything with React and stuff we talked about last week. You should do everything on Google Chrome. I know it says here that you should get it working on the CSE machine. I might test it on one of the following 2. That's okay. I would just recommend doing Chrome locally. Your tutors will be testing your work on Chrome too, so you don't need to stress much about that. Using code found online, you can use some code that you find on the internet, just as long as it's small snippets. Things on Stack Overflow that don't seem too proprietary are generally free game, because you'll come across a lot of code samples like, how do I pass arguments into props? You'll have lots and lots and lots of questions about React, and it's reasonable to assume that you will just, in some cases, copy little snippets of code across. Other requirements, the spec is also vague on the front end, so that you have a bit of wiggle room to figure out what you want to do, have a little bit of fun. You can use other packages. So this is probably one of the biggest differences with assignment 2 is that you can essentially install tons of JavaScript stuff. So if you want your web page to do something, you don't have to go and build everything from scratch. You can actually go and install other libraries that help you display tickers and banners and sidebars and component libraries. You can do anything you want. Like if you can npm install it, you can use it, with pretty much the exception of other declarative frameworks like Angular and Vue.js, and use your common sense there. I'm sure there's a couple of libraries out there that would undermine the spirit of the assignment, but if you're not sure, just post on the forum. Like, common sense will prevail. And then here, the use of universal CSS is banned. So what that means is that all the CSS you use in this assignment should be either a CSS module, right? How to use CSS modules in React.js. CSS modules are essentially, I'm pretty sure there's some other material on this in shoots or lectures and stuff, but CSS modules are a little bit like universal CSS in the sense that you kind of have a CSS file and you write them like this. It's just how you import them is a bit different. So just to take a step back, when we say that universal CSS is banned, what we're saying is that what we did last week, where we just had this like .css file and we just like import / that CSS file, that's not okay, because what happens is universal CSS, it pollutes all of your pages. It's honestly just like a normal website where like you include some CSS and it just applies it everywhere. That doesn't build good scalar modular websites. So we try and use something like, for instance, instead of calling it app.css, we call it app.module.css. And we import it a little bit differently too. Instead of just saying import app.css, we actually say import styles from app.css. And that means that now when you reference your styles, you actually do styles dot, so it's all about scoping. Like CSS modules is just about scoping. It's basically trying, like if you think about normal, boring, old classic CSS, there everything's a global variable. You are trying to avoid global variables in CSS. That's how you should think about this. Now, you can do this with CSS modules, which is probably like the simplest way. You can do this with, as Mitchell's asked, component libraries like Material UI. Some of you might be able to build entire websites without having any CSS files, because you actually just manipulate, Material UI's library, and their components if you want. So you can honestly, you might just use all of their components. Like there's this one called, it's like another one. What's a fun one? Badge. Here you go. There's some badges. You might just use all of this stuff. And you can see that if you include this isn't including CSS, but the library itself is using CSS. And the third way is to use styled components. That's a very custom way to do things. I'd say that's like using styled components is probably quite professional, in the sense that if you went and looked at a lot of fairly heavy duty websites, I'm guessing that they're not using component libraries out of the box very often. Like Bootstrap, yes, Liam, Bootstrap is also a component library, just like Material UI. They're probably using style components, and that's okay too. So in summary, it's like style components, CSS modules, component libraries, thank you. They're all okay. The only thing we don't like is universal CSS. Tanit says less than 10 lines of code in total, or for each code block? For each code block. So, you got to think about being a first year again, right? Like most of you are pretty smart by this point. If a student in first year Googled how to do a for loop, or how to print out all the array elements, they'd get like a 4 or 5 line piece of code. That's not some special custom piece of code, right? That's just a person on the internet who showed you how to do something basic. My point is you're going to find stuff like that all the time, and you shouldn't feel bad to actually go and steal that. You are all smart people, and you can tell the difference between grabbing a little snippet of code to help solve a common problem you don't know how to solve, and someone giving you like something that's clearly was written by them and no one else was probably going to write it, and you're actually plagiarizing. And if you're not sure what that line is, again, I would just say post in the forum, but I think it's a pretty manageable line for most people. So that was kind of the crux of the spec with the use of universal CSS. Now, section 5, teamwork. Some of you are in pairs, some of you are individual. If you're individual, you have a little less work to do. We'll talk about that in a sec. If you're in pairs, you have a little bit more work to do. But the most important thing I need to stress about the assignment, if you're in a pair, if you're in a group, is you need to commit regularly and commit together, because if you don't demonstrate that you had an approximately equal code contribution to your partner, you may be liable to lose a reasonably substantial amount of marks, depending on how uneven that is. Now, it doesn't have to be perfectly even. Many of you, particularly the undergrads, have done 1531 with me, thankfully. So you have a sense just from that of what even means. It just means that you've all kind of done enough stuff. It's the same principle here. So don't stress about it. But the point is that we'll kind of quickly glance, and if we see someone's done 3/4, 4/5 of it, and the other person's done less, we may adjust marks. You know, so just be wary of that. If you are in a pair, you do need to use git and commit, right? You can't just push it all at the end. I mean, you can, but you lose the protection, you know? Like, you can't protect yourself at that point if something was to happen. So I'm not so much saying if you don't do it properly, your bad things will happen. It's more just like if you don't do it properly, you don't have the protections for, you know, in case something bad happens. So keep that in mind. The last section's about submission and originality of work are all the same, and late submission and stuff. So I just want to then focus in on the marking criteria. Now, for this assignment, 60% of the marks come from the feature set and mobile responsiveness. So it's basically like, you know, doing the stuff and making sure it's mobile responsive. Get 60% of your marks. It's a little less than assignment 2 because we're a little more interested in some other areas in this assignment, not just like doing the stuff. You do also need to fill in a progress.csv, as you can see. Wait, which way is it? There. It's really weird on my screen. You get 5% of your mark for ensuring that your code is linted. Again, for those of you who haven't looked at it yet, who haven't looked at the linting lecture, it might not make a great deal of sense, but basically, in your front-end folder, you have code, and if you run yarn lint in your front-end folder, if you do not have code that is linted correctly, it will throw some errors. If you do have code that's linted correctly, it will return without any errors. You get 5% if there's no linting problems. You get nothing if there are linting problems. Every year someone says, are there partial marks? It's like, no, because it's 5%, it's a very small amount, and it's pretty much just saying, like, you either did it or you didn't. And it's completely deterministic. Like, it's the one part of the marking criteria that you should have 100% confidence in when you submit it, that you have or don't have those marks, because nothing is inhibiting you. There is no room for interpretation. 10% for code style. Just like assignment 2, your tutor will mark your work. Again, they're not looking for perfection. They're looking for things you've done that are obviously wrong, such as, you know, excessive repetition, hard to understand files. So they're marks to lose. Tutors kind of look at you and say, let's assume they've gotten full marks and see if they've done anything kind of silly. Where things get more interesting, 15% of the marks comes from testing. This is you writing tests for your React components and your entire application. This is one of the last things I'd recommend you do. I don't want to come across and be like, testing doesn't matter, but it's just the reality that the testing lectures are really late in the course. So in an ideal world where you've already done 68, I'd tell you to write tests as you go, but I'm a realist, and many of you are trying to get your head around React.js. Just like when you first learn programming language, you don't try and test right away. So make sure you leave the time aside, particularly in week 10. Many of you will probably do this in the few days prior to submission to actually do that part. I won't talk about it much today either because, again, they'll just kind of fall on some deaf ears. But there are testing lectures. You can go and watch them anytime. It's really quite manageable. I don't think testing is the hardest thing in the world, but I do think you can't just smash it out in a night. So, you know, if this is due on a Thursday morning of week 10, don't turn around on a Wednesday afternoon of week 10 and think, I'm going to teach myself testing tonight and do it. I think for a typical student, it's a bit more involved than that. 10% of the mark comes from UI, UX, and accessibility. So that's, you know, there's like the UI, UX lectures, Jamie's one, Sparky's ones, where they talk about, you know, what's good UI, what's bad UI. Again, they're kind of marks to lose. We don't give marks out for incredible UI. We essentially take marks off when we think that there are problems or the UI is substandard. And then similarly, accessibility, there's Mike Namlee's lectures on accessibility, operability, understandability, those ones. ARIA labels, we talked a bit about that last Wednesday. This one, your tutor's really just looking to see that you've done 3 or 4 things to, you know, show that you're caring about it. So, you know, if you're like, I did this and this and that. And for all of the UI, UX, and accessibility stuff, there's a little markdown file called uiux.md inside your repo, which you should go and write some notes in. because that's what your tutor's going to look at when they mark you, because your code's going to be massive. They're not going to know exactly where to look, and we don't want to overlook something. We want to make sure we've seen the work you've done. So use that as an opportunity to help your tutor out. Don't think of these markdown files as where you'll get your marks. It should just be where you help tutors find what they're going to look at to give you the marks, okay? That's really important. And then the last one, we have 5% of extra features. So there's an extra 5% there of bonus marks that do flow into the other assignment marks, where if you have some other crazy ideas or you want to do something extra, you can do it if it's not in the spec, and you can write down what you've done inside of the bonus.markdown file, which is in the project folder. There's a typo here. This says 75% of the course. The exam is now 20%. That's just a typo. I'm going to make a note of that. Yep. So that should be 80%. But what I just want to reiterate about the bonus marks, again, these are not easy marks. They are designed for students who are nearly getting 100% to say, I've got some time, I've got some excitement, I'm going to go and do some extra work. And I'm going to go do a few more cool things. So you can do it. Anyone can do those bonus marks. But what I'm saying to you is that, again, I know I say this a lot, the mark per hours of effort for bonus marks is the worst ratio in the assignment. So if you're focused on getting the most out of your time, it's the last thing you should do, is what I'm saying. Looping back to some of the questions before we go back to section 2 and look at the whole assignment. Reese says, what's your personal preference for styling in React? CSS modules, style components, or component libraries? It depends what I'm doing. For a small thing like this, I would just use Material UI or Bootstrap. It's what I did for Eccles, the course website. This is all Material UI. You can actually go look at the source code. This is one of the exciting parts about getting to this point in the course is the entire front end for Eccles is actually right here. And in fact, you could go and look at this and copy it and download it and run it. I'm pretty sure it works. But you can go and see everything here. It's all right here. You can go and see the header on the page. You know, there's the header. There's some text. It's got some Material UI components. It's got a menu icon. It's got a page title. That makes sense. It's all right there to go and look at. But yeah, so I think Material UI or other component libraries are great for these small projects because you don't need super customizability. Jimmy says, what does Perl use for styling or its tech stack? Yeah, so the company I'm associated with outside of the uni, we use a lot of style components, which is because style components and CSS modules are very custom. Style components tends to scale a bit better. What you'll find with a lot of libraries like Material UI or Bootstrap is it'll get you there for 80 to 90% of the time, but it just will feel very difficult to go and do that last 10%, particularly when you want something that looks a certain way. So I think we used Semantic UI at one point, another framework, and then we eventually just got off it. Reese says, do we use Jest for testing? Yes, we do use Jest for testing. Jest is a very popular NPM-based testing framework. It's covered in the lectures. Tanit says, is component testing and UI testing, which is a week 9 lecture topic, is that comparable to unit testing and integration testing in backend? Yes-ish. Like, yes. Without getting too whatever, yes, they're just different levels of abstraction. You know, where component testing is testing little things quite specifically, like does this button work? Like component testing, you would test if this button works, and you would test if like this menu item works and if these tabs work. Whereas UI testing is actually testing, can I log in and view a lecture and view a tute? It's actually looking at like a real person flowing through it. Yeah. Question from Johnson about the marking criteria. What are the specific requirements for the mobile responsiveness part? That's a good question. Similar to assignment 2, we are just looking that it seems okay. We do not have any specific requirements beyond telling you the smallest screen size. It essentially just means that your website should behave. So again, if you look at, say, the Material UI website, it's like this website, you know, it's there, and it just seems fine on different, you know, just works on different sizes. You know, like, you look at that and you think, yeah, it seems to make sense. Like when I got asked this question for assignment 2, I think my answer was, you know, you should be able to look at your site on different sizes, and for your friends or family not to go, oh, it looks a bit broken. That's it. Doesn't need to be like, wow, that was elegant and beautiful. It's just like, we want to see that you've actually clearly gone and looked at the different sizes and make sure that the site's still usable and doesn't look terrible. So that's what that is. Okay. Let's get into section 2, the work to do. Now, I can't explain everything here in detail. You're probably going to have to go and play the Kahoot stuff, but basically, feature 1, feature 2, feature 3 are all about the Kahoot admin. They're all about this thing, where you actually go and create a Kahoot. You're the teacher of a classroom. You're creating and managing a quiz. That's what features 1, 2, and 3 are about. It has nothing to do with the people playing the game. Feature 1 is all about an admin logging in, registering, logging out. Feature 2 is all about an admin seeing all the games, all the Kahoots that they can play. It's about being able to edit one. We call them big brain because, you know, we don't want to call it a Kahoot. Being able to edit a whole game, you know, a whole quiz. Being able to edit questions within a quiz, right? Being able to then take a game and start the game, actually make it run. As in, like, all right, the game's starting. Come on, kids in the classroom, let's come and play the game together. Like, let's all do this quiz together. To be able to stop the game, to say, yep, game's over, everyone, and to be able to get the results of a game as well. So it's like, okay, the game's over. Let's all see how everyone did. So features 1, 2, and 3 are all focused on just the admin dealing with the game. 2.4, so I'm just looking at this again. Where's the advance? Oh, the screen. Okay, until the admin advances the quiz. Okay, sorry, I was just looking for a particular detail. So feature 4 is all about someone playing the game. It's actually all about the students playing the Kahoot. So you're an admin over here, goes and registers, they go and create a game, they go and fill the game with questions, they go and start the game, just like waiting for students. And then a bunch of little students come along and they all start joining the game. So feature 4 is all about students joining, getting ready to play, and actually playing it, and then all the students seeing their results as they go. And the admin, while the game's playing, is able to like click next question and next question. So feature 4 is where it all comes together. Feature 1, 2, and 3, like feature 1 and 2 are all about, you know, admin signing in, creating and editing a game. Feature 3 is like running a game without anyone using it. Feature 4 is let's actually have people use it. And then feature 5 are some advanced features, including game upload, a lobby screen, past quiz results, a point system. This is work that was created for the pairs, so that they had a bit more to do, because obviously, you know, with pairs, there's like more person power that are able to get the work done. So, you know, we give them a bit more to do. And you'll notice that on each of these features, it tells you how much you get if you're doing it alone and how much it's for if you're doing it as a pair. So if you're doing this assignment alone, you don't actually have to do any of 2.5. And if you're doing it alone, you get 12% instead of 10%. For feature 4, you get 12% instead of 10%. You know, so it's like you have to do less to get the same marks. 2.6 is linting. We've kind of explained that. You just need to be able to run yarn lint in the front end folder. 2.7 outlines all of the information about testing. Again, I'm not going to go through that extensively because many of you are so far from that testing lecture that you'll just come back to this later. And we can chat about it in week 9 and Monday of week 10 too. And then 2.8, some other notes, which just explain that there's also a config.json with the port. And probably the most important thing to understand, which is also a little bit confusing, is that there's this file in the backend called custom.js. And let me just pull it up for you. So in the backend, inside the source folder, there's a file called custom.js. Now, why this file is important is because your front end, unlike assignment 2, we don't actually prescribe to you how some things are structured. So with the big brain, when you create a game, we actually don't, in the back end, have any idea of how you're structuring that game. Is it an object? Is it a list of lists of objects? Like, what keys are in the object? We don't know. We actually just say, hey, give us the game object as JSON. We'll store that, and then we'll give it back to you later. The kind of tricky part about this, though, is that you will then need to modify the backend slightly so that the backend is actually able to extract information from your big game object. And what I mean by that is, if you have for example, this is probably very conceptual for you at the moment. Let me just open up assignment 3. For example, if you decide that your game is going to be, a list of, questions, and, the title question is, what is the color of red? And the solution is red, and there's like, the answers is another list where, the answer is blue. Actually, I shouldn't have that solution. The answers are like that, and it's like correct is false, and there's like a few of these like that. And like you might structure your code like this, because we can let you do whatever you want, to describe a game for an admin. This is what you push to the server. If you haven't actually started the assignment, this won't make much sense at the moment, so don't stress that you're missing something. It's just not going to make a lot of sense. I'm just signposting this because I want you to just randomly in a week be like, oh, I remember he said something about that. So this might be your game, but the problem is your backend has to do some processing. Like, for instance, when a player submits an answer, the server needs to be able to determine whether that answer was correct. And because it doesn't actually know about your data structure, there's this important file called custom.js where you actually go and modify it, and all of these functions actually just take in a question, which is basically like this object here. And all you have to do in each of those functions is actually just return the thing it's looking for. So for instance here, this one, it's like quiz question public return. It's actually saying, oh, for a given data structure of a question, produce another object that doesn't contain any important metadata, i.e. the answer, to return to a player. So that's like when the backend is like, oh, I need to give the player the question now and all the answers. It can't just filter out the solution part. It can't just like get rid of this correct part because it doesn't actually know what the structure is because you've set the structure. It needs you to implement this function to filter it out. Again, I reckon half of you are probably just like, what are you talking about? It's one of these things that makes sense when you get to it. So you don't actually have to worry about this until 2.4. So what I'd say is, remember that I've said something vaguely important here if you haven't understood it. Go start the assignment, bash through 1.3, 2.1, 2.2, 2.3. Once you get to 2.4, you'll very quickly start to understand what I'm talking about. You'll be like, oh, of course. That makes so much sense why that has to exist now. But now I've talked about it and repeated that several times. Back to the chat, Mitchell. What are you drinking? This is vegetable juice. It's what keeps me alive. And then, how does it know how to advance a question? Well, the admin advances a question. So if we now jump to the API, because we'll start trying to implement a little bit of this, you'll see that the API on the back end is actually made up of your standard register, login, logout. Then we've got a whole bunch of admin quiz management where you can get a quiz, create a quiz, get all the quizzes, create a quiz. Quiz is like a list of questions. It's like a game. Get a particular game / quiz, modify a particular game / quiz, delete a particular game / quiz. But then you can also start a game, advance a game, because once you start it, you just like started a game, and it's actually like, how do I advance it to the next question, to the next question, to the next question, end a game. And then also you can get the status of a particular session and the results of a particular session. Now, again, I occasionally have students say to me like, I don't know what a session is, I don't know what this is. And it's like, part of this assignment, honestly, like a big part of this assignment is there's a lot of information in this API, but there's always going to be some things that don't make sense immediately. And how you learn about this is you go and play around with it. There are a lot of APIs out there that, whether they're well documented or poorly documented, they just don't make sense what in God's name they actually do sometimes until you go and poke around with them. So my best advice is just to go and play around with the API, because you can always reset it. Just like assignment 2, you can just reset the database. Azam says, for linting, can we run it with NPM? Yes, NPM and yarn are genuinely interchangeable. It doesn't really matter. Liam says, I find the mixing of terms quiz and game in the project confusing. Do they mean slightly different things? No, the API just refers to it as a quiz. In the spec, we refer to it sometimes as a game. There are... do we use quiz much? We do. There are some intentional... There are some intentional times where we do things like this, where we use a couple of extra words, and I know it might feel penal, but quite legitimately, and this is as someone who works with a lot of APIs every week, it's like we're trying to give you exposure to things that mostly make sense, but to really get them to fully make sense, you just have to dig a little bit more, you know, because the objective, at least for me, is to give you exposure to something that I think is indicative of you know, a real experience as much as reasonably possible, without being contrived or penal. So anyway, it's any other questions about the spec? Because what we'll do is we might actually take a very short break, and then we'll go straight into coding and then go till we wrap up. Just because we're about to just kind of code, and I don't want to code for 5 minutes and then take a break. So any other questions about the spec or the assignment before we jump into coding? I'll give you all 20 or so seconds to answer. Cool. All right. Well, let's take a 5-minute break. We'll be pretty quick, and then we'll get stuck straight into just we'll do a little bit of register in React, and maybe creating a game, playing around with a couple of routes. It'll be quite light and just give you a sense of the landscape. So, oh, sorry, Liam, did I miss that one? Unique routes. I don't think I have a question about unique routes, Liam. YouTube might have filtered it out. I can't see it. Anyway, William says, what do they mean by unique route? So a unique route is essentially a... think of it like... so when the spec says something like this, a unique route must exist for this screen that's parameterized by the session ID. What that means is that there's a screen to get the results of a game. And there should be a unique URL that if I enter that URL, I should be able to get a page or a screen that gives me the exact results for that game. Because in assignment 2, you didn't really have URLs, right? You just kind of had your app. And if you refresh the page, you just went back to the login screen. Whereas in this application, because we're using a more powerful environment, which is a declarative framework like React, we're saying that actually there should be a URL for a dashboard, and there should be a URL for a list of games or quizzes. There should be a URL for a specific game or quiz. There should be a URL to create a new game or quiz, you know. Just like a real website, just like how, you know, in this website here, you know, I have like, there's like a page for React and a page for Vue. These are all unique routes here. You know, some routes, it says parameterized on a certain variable. That is essentially just saying, trying to think of what's a good example? Deloitte blogs. I don't know if this is a thing. Okay, blog Deloitte. I have no idea what I'm looking at. Oh, is that all the blogs they have? Okay. Anyway, my point is that you got this like website here, but when I click on a particular blog, whether you're looking at blog A, blog B, blog C, they all kind of have, this is not a good example. What I should really look at is like pagination or something. Google kind of does it, but I think it's a bit hard to see with Google. You'll notice with Google that there's actually a page number baked into the URL somewhere. I don't know. I don't have a good example of parameterized. Actually, you know what it is? Here's one. On GitLab, right? Every time I load a file, whether it's content cards or header or logout, this is the exact same web component, right? These are not 3 hard-coded web pages. You've probably figured that out by now. These are the same. This is the same web component with just different content shoved in it. But the point is, how, when you load the page, do you know what web content to see? Well, it depends on what's in the URL. So you see in this URL, it's logout. In this URL, it's header. In this URL, it's content cards. So what we're saying there is that this is a screen to view code parameterized by the file name of the code you're viewing. So when we say something in the spec like, you know, a unique route must exist to edit a big brain game question, quiz question, then there should be a URL that contains the game or quiz ID and the question ID in the URL, so that when you load that URL, you actually get a particular amount of content. So for those who actually dug further in assignment 2, Liam's comment is, so it's just like from assignment 2, the fragment-based URL routing. It's of the same spirit as that, yes. And Minchell says, for navigating between page routes, my current setup refreshes the browser. Is that okay or not? Like in assignment 2. It's not okay. Single page apps should not have full page refreshes. Thankfully, there are very, very easy ways to get around that, which we will do after the break, because we'll make a couple of pages in our app. So let's do that. Let's take a 5-minute break. We'll start up just before 7, and then we'll do some coding for assignment 3. Cool. Welcome back from the break. William asked while I was on break, one thing I'm paranoid about in my likes and comments, new jobs, and deleted jobs for assignment 2 would not show unless you refresh the page. It works, but not on click. Is that bad? I can't remember exactly. That's not ideal. I think there is some problem. Like there is some problem with that in terms of what we asked. But I guess we'll see as you get marks back too. Feel free to ask in a help session too. I'm sure a tutor would look at your assignment if you really wanted that question answered sooner. So assignment 3. We're going to try and start this now. We're just going to try and do a registration thing and then like a little create game thing or something like that. So here is how I would go about starting the assignment. Firstly, everything you're doing is going to be in the front end folder. And then we've also got this source folder. Now, we've got all the default stuff here that kind of came with a Create React app that I kind of culled out for you all. So you'll see if I go find my React app here. Yep, I have my hello, and you know, we got the hot reload working over here. So I put my code over here, and it's like, you know, hello, how are you? Great. Okay, so we have something like that. Now, the first thing you're probably going to want to do when you start the assignment probably is to use React Router DOM. There is a lecture on this which you can watch, so I'm going to be pretty quick skimming through it. But it's essentially just a React routing library. You can go and look at the Getting Started guide. You know, there's a new version v6, which is like the standard version that I think you installed now. So you can go and install it in your app pretty easily. Like I'm just gonna go stop my React. I'm gonna click npm install React Router DOM. It's gonna go and install the library. Again, I did do a lecture on this literally like a month ago. It's like a new lecture. So I'm gonna skim through it. But essentially, you can kind of go and find some. That's what we want. So typically what you do with React Router DOM is you will go and grab this browser router component, right? Which is essentially like, it's like a list of pages. It's a list of URLs that your site has. And what you will do is you will, actually, you know what? Just before I jump into that, let me quickly touch on components and props really quickly, because I think this might make more sense to just do that slightly before. So what I can do with my app, so I've got my really simple React.js app here, which just has app.jsx. That's all it has. And what I might want to do is I might want to have a register form. So here in my web page, I might put a header here that says, you know, register or something. And then, you know, I might not, maybe I'd have a form here sometimes. My React app's not running right now because I was just installing some stuff, so I can't get that to refresh. But you know, you might have a little register header, and then you'll have your email input type equals text like this. You'll have your password, and you'll have your name as well, right? Email, password, name. You'll have something quite straightforward like that. And what you might want to do is actually go and break this up into what you call different components. Now, there is a components and props lecture that goes through this a little bit more. But generally how I'd recommend you structure most of your projects is you should go and create a new folder in your repo, one called pages and the other one called components. Now, typically what I recommend is a good idea is that your pages folder tends to consist of actual web pages that resemble like a real page, like an actual URL. So if something has a URL, it's generally good to put it in the pages folder. Again, I just have to restart my editor, I'm sorry. So you see I've got my pages and components tends to be smaller components. So for instance, let's say I am going to go and create a new page, which I will call, let me just sort this out. I'm going to go call this one, cool, okay. Call this one register.jsx. So I just made a new page called register.jsx. And I'm just going to go, and a typical, like the simplest React component, it always looks the same. It's pretty much always just function something like this, and then it's export default something, and then all you have to do here is say return hi, and there's a component. There's a React component. And what's cool is that you can go and get this React component. You can go and import that into your file. So I can say here import register from pages/register. I know my head is in the way. I'll get rid of my head for you. You know, import it like that, and then I can actually just include it on my page like this. So now when I go and start up my React app, you can see it says hi, and then it has email, username, password. And that's because React is using a composite pattern here to include my register.jsx on the page and then have this here as well. But what I might want to do instead is, you know what, I actually want this to be inside my register component. And in fact, my register component, I actually want it to just say, you know, h1 register. And then I want to have this underneath it. Again, excusing from my head here. Like this. You know, I want to have that underneath it. So that my register component is now just that and then this. But what if I want to actually turn this, like get the form aspect of this and put it in another component? That's when I can come along and create a component in my components folder called, say, register form.jsx. And the reason this is a component is because this isn't a register page. This is actually just a component of another page. So, you know, here export default register form, and then here I'll just return, you know, I'll just return my email password name like that. And then on my register page, I will actually just include that. So I can actually just include register form here like this. So import register form from, and then I go back a folder to components / register form like this. And now everything should fall into place in theory. Let me just double check it works by randomly modifying something. Okay, yeah, it seems to work. Hot reload's not liking me at the moment. It's okay. But now I've actually gone and, you know, created some components in React. But what I was trying to do was install React Router DOM. So if I go back to my React Router DOM examples, typically what I'd recommend most of you do is you go and install React Router DOM as the kind of outermost one, or at least one of the outermost components. So I can go and copy and paste this, and then here, instead of my main app, which is like my entire app is just stored within this like app.jsx, I can just go and paste in browser router here like this. And now I need to go and include some of these imports as well to actually make this work. So I go and include that. Now you see that how this is set up is that it's a router. It's got a few different URLs. At the moment, I'll just use one URL called register. And you see that the way React Router DOM works is it actually takes in a component. So what it says is that when the URL is /register, I want you to go and I want you to load the register component. So now when I go back to my React app, I'm not 100% sure why that's working. Oh, because I'm still actually including my register component here. So if I get rid of that, you'll see the page is blank now. But when I go to /register, I should, if I spell it correctly, I actually get my register here. Now let's say for a second I have another page where it's actually a login form.jsx. And I'm going to go and rename this to login form. And this login form doesn't need a name anymore. It just needs a you know, username, password. And then I'm going to go and copy my register page and create a login page. And that login page is very similar. It's just going to be nearly the same, except a little bit different. And I probably need to update. No, that's all fine. So now what I do is I go and add another path called login, except this one is going to load the login component. And now I can just come and copy and paste this and use login here. Right? So now I have a /login and a /register. And if I want to move between those two pages, I can simply use the link component. So link is another React Router DOM component. In fact, I don't need to do another import. I can just include it here. And what link allows me to do is to, without refreshing the page, move between these components. So I could actually go and put something up here, like my nav bar if I wanted to. And all I'll have here is, say, register and login, and I might put I'll put a line between them or something. And this will appear on every page now. Except instead of doing, a hyperlink reference, I actually say, you know what, link to /register. Link to /login. And now these are actual hyperlinks that will take me, if the page doesn't crash. Something weird's, oh, what have I done? It doesn't like this bracket? Is that the problem? No, I've done something else. Someone might notice before me. Is that the wrong code? I don't know. Maybe I should read the error. Process is not defined. Too many blank lines at the beginning of the file. I don't know. Just going to restart React. No, okay. We've got some problem here, clearly. Let's look at the error. What's the top error? Use href may be used. Okay, I did this in the other lecture. Everything to do with React Router DOM needs to exist within the browser router. In fact, it might even need to exist within, maybe there is enough? Okay, it doesn't, it's okay there. Yeah, so everything that happens to do with routing needs to happen within a browser router tag. And you can see that what this now allows me to do is to actually dynamically move between pages. So why is that not, oh my god, why is that freezing up? Okay, I'm having a really weird error. I have no idea what this error is. Oh, too many blank lines is, okay. I might have to move my head. So confusing. I don't know why it doesn't like the blank lines. Really strange. Oh, sorry. This is linting errors. Yeah, okay. I'm not sure what this process is not defined. This is very strange. It's just this. I would normally not be bothered by this, but as you can see, it's like it's not actually letting me click on anything. Let me see if I still get the same problem in Chrome. Yeah, I do get the same problem. Why is that? This is all very strange to me. Last comment in the import list. Does someone notice something I haven't? There's a comma after the link. Oh, that comma's after the link's okay. Yeah, maybe it is that. I don't know. I don't think I can have it in routes. Let me just get rid of it and see what happens though. Nah, okay. I don't know what in the world is happening right now. Strange. Alright, well, let's quickly solve this together. Let's go and grab an input that I can't click on. Let's go and replace everything here with just that input, and let's see what happens. Okay, still doesn't work. Something mighty peculiar is going on. Weird. Let's quickly Google it. Even though the error is not coming up now, just restart it one more time. process is not defined. Sorry for this. This is quite a strange occurrence of problems. Okay, so part of the problem here might be to do with the fact that the project is potentially quite old, in the sense that the Create React app that I used, maybe take out the import link. That's a good point. Who said that? Liam. That's a good suggestion, Liam. Still not okay. Man, I don't know. One thing that might be on my mind is that the actual React project we gave you was like Create React app. It was quite old, like as in I did this like a year and a half ago. So I might try and install a newer version of like the thing that Create React app uses to run itself. I have no idea if this is it. I'm genuinely a little bit uncomfortable by how awkward this is. But sometimes, I mean, this is like a classic example of like why abstractions become difficult, right? Because as you do these more abstractions, little things go wrong and you're just like, I have no idea what's going on here. So this is only my suspicion because of, again, like if you create React app, there's like some more features, like they constantly add features to the setup. Whereas what we have is something slightly older. So I'm just quickly installing this. Quickly is not the right word. But I want to get to it. I want to do a couple of fetches before it gets too late. Oh, I love things installing. Large code bases can take a very long time to do their installations. Minutes upon minutes upon minutes sometimes, so. Okay, so Mitchell says this update solves the Node 17 problem as well. So versioning is a very serious and interesting topic. Well, let's see if this solves that. Okay. Now I'm getting some strange errors. Plugin React was conflicted between... I'm just going to have to remove some stuff. Just for the sake of the lecture. I'm going to get rid of the ESLintar file just for the moment. I don't want to do that, but I'm conscious that we're being recorded and every minute I spend is 300 minutes of people's time. Okay, this is starting to work now. So probably some strange version. I'm actually surprised that no one's come across that yet, because I just used the assignment 3 stub, though based on Liam's comment, perhaps they have. So I'm not sure. I might have to put that in a forum post. So now I'm just gonna undo. This should. Why is it? Why is it being difficult? Oh, did I remove the wrong one? Oh. Yeah, I'm not gonna try and solve the linting problem right now. I've wasted enough time. Okay. Alright, so you can see here, thank God, thank you for going on that crazy detour with me. I hope if nothing else that kind of helped you appreciate the pain of these abstractions. So I've got my login and my register here, and I can easily move between these two like this, right? That's the cool thing about React Router, is it lets you do things like that. Now let's actually do the registration part though, because the register form, we want to call an API. But with React, you know, we can't just like do dom.collect elements. So what we actually have to do here is store some state variables. And I'm going to do that by storing email, like we did on last Wednesday's lecture. And I'm going to use react.useState, and I'm going to go default one of these for email, password, and name. I'm going to go default one of these, default all of these to an empty string. Right? And I need to import React, because React's like a fairly simple library to import. And then what I'm going to do is for each of these inputs here, I need to say that, you know what, on key down, we are going to simply take the event object and call set for e.target.value. It's the same thing we did on Monday. And let me just turn word wrap on here. In fact, just to make things easier, sometimes I really do like this style where you do like each attribute of a tag is just tabbed in like that. Sometimes I think it can be a little bit easier to read depending on what you're doing. Anyway, I don't know if that's any easier, but we got our 3 inputs here. Great. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to console log here email, password, name, and I'm just going to look at the console to make sure I'm actually capturing them. So when I write hey, or like, what was it? Hello, how are you? I can see key down here isn't giving me what I want. I think maybe on change is the right one, because key down, I don't know if it's capturing the key. See, that one looks a bit better. If you noticed on the old one, when I was typing hello, when I hit the O, it was only giving me hell. But now if I, do Hayden at unsw.edu.au and I say passwords, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and my name is Hayden, I've got all those variables. And now if I do have another button underneath here, an actual button, what I can do is I can add an on-click to that button, and that will just say call a function. And that function might be register. And then I can go make a function up here, const register, and you know what I can do? When someone actually clicks that button, I'm just going to print out the state variables, and this tells me that I am ready to do a fetch. So I do this, I do this, I do that. There's my data. So now if I want to go do a fetch, well, my backend's running over here, and I know that I've got my /admin/auth/register, and like assignment 2, it takes in those values, so I can actually try and do a fetch. I can say, well, you know what? I would like to fetch HTTP localhost. You can obviously go and abstract all this and clean it up. 5005/admin/auth/register. My options are method is post, and my header, is it headers? Header? Can't remember, we got that wrong last time. Content type, text JavaScript. And then the body, I believe, is just going to be, JSON.stringify, email, password, name, something like that. See if that works. I just kind of did that in a bit of rush. I haven't thought about it too heavily. Click register. Okay, go to the network tab, see what happened. Cold register. 200, okay. How can I go and check what just happened? Well, I can always again go to my backend folder and I can go and open my database.json, and you'll see here what some people have seen in the forum, which is that I have an admin, but that admin is undefined. And that's because basically I haven't sent the right data to the backend, and this backend is a very light, dumb backend, and it has basically, you have not given it the right data, so it's kind of crapped the bed. That's because this information here is not being passed through. And I'm not sure why that is. Does anyone else know why that is? I haven't written a fetch since our last lecture, so I've probably just written it wrong. So I'm going to go look it up on the API. You're all very good fetchies, no doubt by now. I've got the fetch function, make sure I've done the right things. Headers, oh no, I knew it was one of the way. Oh yeah, not text JavaScript, application/JSON. Thank you, though it didn't matter because I got the header wrong. It should have been headers. I think I made that mistake last time. I think a couple other people have made that mistake. So now we're going to go back here, and if I'm not mistaken, I can click register again, and I think it refreshed the page. Yeah, so that's a cool thing about React's hot reloading. I didn't have to refresh that page, and you'll actually see there I've been added. It's been added now. So there's my user, and in fact, I'll go add one more. If I add Hayden at unsw.edu.au, password, I don't know, raccoons, and my name is Hayden, and I register, there's my new account. So I have actually successfully registered now. So that was pretty straightforward. One cool thing about Assignment 3 is that I don't need to use promises because I can use the async syntax if I want to, where I can await this. So instead of having to do the .thens, I can actually just say, go do the fetch. Once it's done, then move on to the next line of code. So my next line of code might be to say, go to the dashboard. So I can come here and I'm going to go make another route called, I'm not saying there's a dashboard, but let's go try and get, let's go and add a quiz, right? Or like, let's create a new, quiz/new. That's going to be my new route on the front end. And I'll call this new page quiz new, and I'll come here and I'll duplicate that, and I'll call this one, quiz new.jsx, and you can start doing this pretty quickly once you get used to it, quiz new, and it's just going to be a page like that. And then I say, well, once I register, it'd be really great to be able to kind of go to that page, like just like be taken to the page to create new quizzes. Okay, so we can try that. Well, how do I do that? Well, now I'm going to Google, React Router DOM, redirect. William said, with async await, how would you catch rejects? If there's a reject with async await, you can actually catch it with the kind of classic scripting style accept, like this. It's much more imperative. That's how you'd catch that. Remember, async await is simple and works really well for the vast majority of simple cases. Promises you can do more complicated things with. So remember, promises does everything. So I'm going to look here to how to redirect. I'm going to scroll down. I'm just looking for code because I have very little attention span. I'm looking for something that looks like redirecting. I'm just going to start searching redirect. React Router redirect. Okay. Now this is something particularly interesting about how certain parts of... There are other ways to redirect, but this is something... Oh yeah, there's two ways you can do it. Okay, we'll use this one. Screw it, we'll use this one. One is that you can use the React Router DOM navigate hook, where what you do is you actually call this navigate function in your code somewhere, and it will send you to another page. Here's a good point of design. You might be tempted to say, take this and go and include this on this page here, and then follow the instructions which say that you make a new hook variable called navigate, and then I do use navigate. Then I come down here and I go navigate to /quiz/new. Now that's one way you could do it. Now I've got a register page, I register AAA, I get taken to quiz new. See how it redirected me to this page? And now I'm like on this page. What I don't like about this particular approach here is that, oh, sorry, Jimmy pointed out before that I did try except. I just want to make clear that that was wrong. Oops, never mind, it's not going to come up. It's try catch, not try except, thank you. What I don't like about this approach is that my register form should be focused on a form. It should be focused on how to handle a form. It shouldn't be focused on routing. Routing should be something that you think about more at a page level. So I've got this register item here. What I think I should do from a design perspective is instead, here, my register form should have a success callback or something like this. And what this success callback will do is it will navigate to /quiz/new. And I will go and put the code here that, does the, const navigate equals news navigate. And I will go and, use that. And then what we'll do here is my register form will take in a property called success, because if I pass in an argument to this component, I can capture it here like this. And what I will do is that once the register succeeds, if it succeeds, I will simply call success. I will simply say, yes, there was success, I am done. Now again, what I like about this, and I don't think a tutor would pick up on this and take any marks off, but what I like about this again, as you've said, my register form is a React component that is not aware of its location in the application. It's not dealing with routing or user flows. Its primary job is to present you with a form and to react with the form and to do something. And in fact, sometimes you can actually take these things even further if you want to and abstract away the entire register function itself. You know, so what I could do if I was being quite serious about this is that I could go, and I don't know if this is necessary, but I could go and take this entire fetch here and I could put this inside my success function, or more here I could say, you know, submit, register form submit. This is a very common pattern in front end, is you have a form and you pass like a submit callback into it. So now here, instead of this, I'll have like a submit callback. And what I do down here is on click, I call submit. But here's the problem with this approach. Everything in this function is pretty chill, except for these three variables, which don't exist in this scope, right? Because they're from the register form. So what you might do here then is you actually will say, you know what, my submit passes you a callback, and that callback expects you to provide it with an email, a password, and a name. And then on your register form here, you can't just give it the submit function. You actually need to say, well, I'm going to call submit with email, password, and name, like that. And now we're getting an error because this needs to be an async function. So now it's like, now I've like completely separated that out, you could say, but I've got an error. Converting circular structure to JSON. Oh, that's weird. I wonder what I've done wrong there. Let's take a look. Console.log. Let's console log these three things. See what it gives us. See what the problem is. Synthetic base event. Oh god. None of this sounds very good. I'm not sure if async's the problem. Converting circular structure to JSON. So now I'm just confused as to what's going wrong here, because when we click on it, we call a function that simply calls submit, gives it the email, the password, and the name, and that submit function is what we passed in here, and that looks like a function to me. So I don't know. Let's go comment a couple of things out here, see if it works. Undefined, undefined. This is very weird. This is weird because you see that the first thing we're printing out looks like it's something, and then password and name look undefined, which doesn't really make any sense to me. If you're not sure, take your code and go and abstract it out just a bit further. So here's, I'll say like submit. Or like, what is it? Like on submit. I'll go and make my own little mini function here. Const on submit equals a function, and all that function is going to do is it's going to simply call submit like that. And I'm going to again console log email, password, name. Liam says, I had this exact problem and gave up on the idea. Well, that's where I'm about to get to, Liam. That's for sure. So now we'll go EEE. Okay, that seems to work. I'm getting uncomfortable now. None of this makes any sense to me. We'll give it one more try with FFF. I have no idea. I have no idea why it didn't like being called in the on-click. I have no idea. That's very strange to me. Maybe the issue was to do with the return. I don't know. Let me just try this. I'm just a little bit confused. No, I had no idea. Anyway, I figured that out by playing around with it. Yeah, there's something definitely strange going on. So just to wrap up this example, now let's say I want to create a new quiz, just to show you another API item here. So you can see here there's another route called create quiz new, and just like assignment 2, it's an authorization endpoint, so I need to give it some kind of token. In fact, I would have gotten the token back from the register. I probably just didn't do anything with it here. I think this can be async. Let me just make sure. So I can say const data equals await fetch console.log data. So let me just register with like something. Okay. 400. Did I already register with that? 200. Yep. So how can I get that data? Well, I can say, I could say, I should say here const response equals that, and then I can say here const data equals await response.json, and then I can console log data because I had to decode it from JSON, right? And then here I'll say I. Okay, so there's my token. Now what I can do is I can store that token globally somewhere. What I might do though is I might actually add it to local storage just because I'm feeling a bit lazy, and I'll say, local storage dot set token is data.token. So hopefully that works. I forget how to do local storage. Set item. There we go. There you go. Local storage dot set item jkll. Okay, so now I'm on the quiz new page, and if I want to, I can actually probably go read something from local storage. So I can say console.log local storage.get item token, and let's actually see what this is. Okay, so there's my token. So I did actually store it in local storage. Now here's the interesting thing. How would I protect pages from if someone tries to access them without being logged in? There are tons of ways you can do it. One really simple way, the simplest way, is to kind of just say, you know what, hey, const token equals this. If not token, then return, or like redirect. Again, navigate. Let's actually just go back to login. So if someone tries to access this page, and they're not able to, like this. So they can access this page right now, but let me go to local storage. And delete this token. Now when I load the page, it should send me to login. I'm not sure why it's not sending me to login. Let's have a look at the token. Oh, it just did. Okay, I don't know what happened. So it didn't like that. So if I go to /quiz/new, you see that it token is null. Okay. I'm not sure why it. Do I need to return nothing? How strange. Oh, you should call navigate in a react.useEffect. Okay, it's telling me what to do, and I'm not even reading it. Thank you. So I should call it in a react.useEffect. I'm not going to explain this tonight. There's lectures on it. There's videos on it. We cover this in tutes. I'll probably do it in my tute tomorrow. I'm just going to check. You know what? Again, if token's null, then we're just going to navigate away from here. Otherwise, we'll just return quiz new. I do need to import React. Often you need to import React if you use like use states or use effects. So yeah, now you'll see that if you're not logged in, it will just send you back to the login page. But if I do go register with something like, this, then on the quiz new it does work because that local storage exists. And now on the quiz new, I could very easily create myself an input. I could call this, quiz name. Input type equals text. Here. Okay, there's my quiz name. Make myself a button. create, add myself an on click, create quiz. Do the things I've done on the other page where I say, const name, set name equals, react.useState empty, come down here, have a create quiz function. And all it's going to do is I'm going to put on this input the same thing I had before, which is, on change is e's set name, e.target.value. And then here I will just console log name and make sure I'm actually got the name out. So, quiz name, click create. Okay, so that's working. And now similar to before, I'm just going to make this an async function and I'm just going to do a fetch. I'm just going to call http localhost 5005 / what's the route, admin / quiz / new. With what options? Well, methods post, headers is content type, application / JSON, and my body, of course, is JSON.stringify of my name. Now, I do need one other thing here, though, which is my token. So my token here needs to be what it says in the doc, which is that I should have an authorization header, which says a bearer followed by token, like that. Now we'll see if this works. Hello? 400? Oh no. What's wrong there? Let's try and catch it. Try. Catch error. Console.log error. Let's try this now. Okay. That wasn't very useful to catch it, was it? Gee, I'm surprised that didn't work. Do I need to refresh? I'm actually not too sure why, maybe the post succeeded. Maybe that's the const response. I probably succeeded. I'm probably just being a bit of a silly. And it actually succeeds. It just succeeds with a 400. Yeah. So here I then, const data equals response.json. Or text, I guess. Or I should say, if response dot, is it status? Is that what it is? Status? Yeah, if response.status equals 400, then we need to say, I could just console log response or await response.text. This is why await async can be really convenient, because you can just kind of throw awaits in there like this. So okay. So the problem here is I've just tried to encode my entire name object. It actually needs to be like this. So my problem was I just tried to JSONify a variable instead of an object. So this should work now. Okay, the fact that I didn't get a response probably tells me it's been added to my database. I can come back here. I scroll down. Okay, I got a quiz. I could add another quiz. Okay, so I'm adding quizzes, right? This is the assignment, right? That's the assignment. Call on APIs. Gets, posts, puts, deletes, making stuff happen. The fundamentals are very similar to what you've seen previously. Okay. Mitchell says, is null falsy already? Null is falsy. You can check for null by checking if something is false. Yeah, null when it's coerced to a boolean is falsy. Yes, like honestly, this is it. I've kind of shown you the bare bones, like multiple components, React router, props, local storage, a couple of fetches, async await, yeah, like it's really just an expansion of this. So I feel pretty happy to leave it here, I think. I feel like I've touched on a little bit of everything. So you could honestly take a lot of that. And I will share this code. I'll put it up in the under the lecture code thing on Eccles. So you can go and just like see it here. You can just, later tonight, you'll just be able to click on the access the lecture code and it'll exist. But are there any other questions before we wrap up tonight? Any other questions from people? Okay, Mitchell says the link and navigate was what I was missing, so thanks. Okay, I'm glad I could be a little bit helpful there. That's good. I'll give you all 15 more seconds. I know there's a YouTube lag, so that's all good. I guess if we get a fix to the state problem, that'd be good. I'm not too sure what the problem is, to be honest, is the other problem. But what I would say is that, generally speaking, sometimes it's good to do this pattern anyway, and have your like functions up here, because then it really, this can really help separate out your logic somewhat, like your display from your logic. So I'm not too sure why that on-click didn't work here. That's genuinely strange to me. I haven't seen that before. But given that this seems like a solution that's extremely similar, I would just say let's do that for now. But I'll keep an eye on that and try and dig into it. It's very, very strange. Okay, well, given the lack of questions, I'm going to say let's wrap up there. Yeah, it'd be funny if it was VS Code. They picked up on the error and it was something stupid. Okay, let's wrap up. Thank you everyone for coming. It was really nice to see you. I'll see you next week for our second last lecture. Mind-blowing. Course is nearly over. Thanks to those who came live. For those who aren't, hi. Hope you're having an okay day. Please make sure you are starting the assignment. If it's Sunday night of week 8 and you're about to start week 9 tomorrow, I'd encourage you to get a move on. But good job for those who've gotten their teeth stuck into it. If you need any help, post on the forum. Tutors are the best. Really happy to help anytime. And have a good night, everyone. And see you all next week. So, see you later.